Can you make a living out of sports betting is a question that any sports fan has asked themselves at some point or another. What began as a somewhat harmless thought experiment has turned into a matter of national concern over the last couple of years. In fact, in the states where gambling has been legalized, American households have seen a significant reduction in savings, lower consumer credit scores, and higher credit card debt. Other studies have found that sports gambling has been replacing traditional investment among younger generations in recent years. I mean, why bother investing in the S&P 500 when you can throw your life savings on the Chiefs and whatever blood magic they're using this season? This shift might be explained by the general perception that sports gambling is more accessible than the stock market and, as such, an easier way to get rich quick. Or as this video very eloquently puts it,
what I want to go over today, my topic is why to invest in sports betting over the stock market. When you're betting on sports, you know the team, you know the players, you know the point spread, and you get paid right after the fucking game. On the stock market, do you really know these companies? Do you know the day-to-day operations? Do you even know where the company's at? Do you know who's running the company? No, you don't.
The short answer to all of this is yes, you do. These are publicly traded companies after all. I get due diligence is not as exciting as reading about whatever the hell is going on with the Jets at the moment, but you can find all this information pretty easily. Also, say what you want about Elon Musk, but he never tricked me into starting an injured Joe Burrow in week 11 or picking Christian McCaffrey as my first rounder. All the guy ever did was to sell me an expensive and faulty electric car that maybe my children will get to drive one day. Now I could sit here and give you 1,000 very valid reasons as to why this will never work, starting with the fact that Americans have collectively lost $245 billion to sportsbooks since 2018, with each American losing around $421 in 2023. Furthermore, some studies estimate that only 3% of sports gamblers are profitable long term. However, in this video we'll take a look at what does it take to join that elite 3%, the strategies used by these successful bettors, and how you can apply them to your own betting habits or, gambling addiction. First, let's talk about risk. Both sports betting and traditional investment carry an inherent level of risk that you need to be comfortable with. Because, well, everything is high risk if you were a pussy. There are many types of risk. On one hand you have your classic 10-leg parlay YOLO risk, and on the other hand you have asymmetric risk. You know, the kind that actually makes you money by maximizing your profits and reducing your exposure. This of course is easier said than done, but professional bettors use various legitimate strategies to consistently win. But before we dive into those, we need to lay some groundwork. If we're looking for ways to minimize risk while betting, wouldn't it make sense to simply bet on the best teams of each league and take whatever marginal profit the sportsbook gives us? Well, yes and no. The guys at Sports Betting Dime made a study to find out which out of the following sports leagues was the most profitable to bet on. In order to do that, they averaged the ROI of the 5 most profitable teams of each league and found that the article also explains that the best performing teams in each league aren't always the most profitable. The Sports Betting Dime website has this very useful tool called Against the Spread that allows you to check the ROI and team records in different scenarios. Using this tool, we can see that betting $100 on the Chiefs throughout the entire regular season would have yielded $437 with a ROI of 27.28%. However, the Commanders would have provided higher ROI, making $549 during the regular season. The Vikings would have been the most profitable team with a whooping ROI of 41.95%. Things are even worse in the NBA, where betting $100 on every game of the reigning champions, the Boston Celtics, would have resulted in a $5 profit. This is because betting for the favorite works until it doesn't, and when it doesn't work, you usually take a big loss. That's why most pros will advise you spreading your bets between favorites and underdogs in a 60-40 ratio. Another key consideration is the fact that odds offered by casinos rarely reflect the true odds of an event occurring. Casinos have many clever ways to trick you into thinking that you have better chances of winning than you actually do. Take roulette for example. When you bet on black or red, you might think it's a 50-50 chance given that you have 18 red numbers and 18 black numbers. However, this isn't true, since casinos add the 0 and double zero slots, bringing the actual win probability down to 47.37%. That pesky little 3% is what ensures that casinos will turn a profit in the long run. In sports betting, bookmakers can't simply add random variables to a game, so they manipulate the odds instead. Let's say the sportsbook offers odds 1.90 for a team to win. This means a successful $100 bet would pay out $190, your original stake plus $90 in winnings. However, based on the team's strengths, the fair odds might be closer to 1.85. This difference, known as the sports beak or use, represents the sport's built-in house edge of around 2.6%. But just because the odds aren't in your favor, it doesn't mean that you can't make money in sports betting. It just means you have to get creative. Value betting is widely considered one of the most effective strategies in sports betting because it focuses on identifying mispriced odds rather than simply picking winners. Finding these pricing inefficiencies is the best way to make it big not only in sports betting but markets in general. As Ray Dalio puts it, you gotta be an independent thinker in markets to be successful because the consensus is built into the price. Or, as the meme goes, everything is priced in. Everything from the Chiefs using blood magic to Lamar Jackson having Taco Bell before the game, Adam Gase hitting the smelling salts on the sidelines, and as well as the general consensus of which team is the better team in any given match are all priced into the odds. And, as we said before, no one is getting rich for betting on the Chiefs. In order to make this for a living, you need to consistently find value in every bet you make. Here's where the concept of expected value comes in handy. In sports betting, expected value is a key concept that helps you determine whether a bet is worth making or not. A positive EV means that over time you can expect to make a profit from the bet, while a negative EV means you'll likely lose your money. To calculate EV, you multiply the probability of winning by the amount you stand to win, and then subtract the probability of losing multiplied by the amount you stand to lose. Let's take a look at this example from the Sports Handle website. A sportbook has the Detroit Lions as minus 150 moneyline favorites over the Chicago Bears. A typical bettor thinks the Lions will win, so they wager on Detroit. A sharp bettor, however, realizes the sportbook line implies the Lions have a 60% chance to win. Though they do believe the Lions will win, they think it's far less likely than the book does. In this scenario, they look instead to the Bears, who are plus 130 moneyline underdogs, which translates to 43.48% winning probability. Even though the plus EV bettor thinks the Lions are the better team, and even though it appears they are more likely to win, they believe the Bears have a greater than 43.58% chance to win. The value in this case is with the Bears, so the plus EV bettor wagers on Chicago. In short, expected value bettors don't wager on who they think will win, but on which scenario is more likely to happen. This sort of opportunity arises for a couple of reasons. The first is that odd makers don't have the resources to get betting lines perfect every single time, especially if you consider the sheer amount of events they have to work with. The second reason is that sportbooks try to encourage balanced betting action on both sides, since too much action on one side could leave them exposed. The last reason is that odd makers will quickly take lines down or adjust them in the event of breaking news that impacts the game, such as injuries or trades. And similar to how they're not perfect at creating lines due to finite resources, they're not perfect at adjusting them, which is where the opportunity arises for the following betting strategy. Middling is a betting strategy that involves placing wagers on both sides of the same bet, but with different lines. The goal is to win both bets, but at the very least ensure that one of them hits. Opportunities for middling arises when a line has moved since the original bet was placed, as illustrated in the following example. Let's take the 2022 NBA season match between the Lakers and the Celtics. The initial odds are as follows. The Lakers are 5.5 underdogs and the Boston Celtics are 5.5 favorites. You bet $100 on the Lakers at odds 1.90. However, before the game begins, the move lines to Los Angeles Lakers plus 3.5 points and the Boston Celtics to minus 3.5 points. You notice that the new odds for the Boston Celtics minus 3.5 points are 1.85. This is where you realize you can place a second bet on the Boston Celtics, creating a middling opportunity. So you bet $100 on the Celtics at odds 1.85 with minus 3.5 points. With this, you have three possible outcomes. If the Lakers win or lose by 4 points or less, your initial bet on the Lakers wins and your second bet on the Celtics loses. If the Celtics win by 5 or more points, your second bet on the Celtics wins and your initial bet on the Lakers loses. If the Celtics win by exactly 4 points, both bets win and you receive payouts for both bets. Trying to play the middle can be a useful strategy for bettors to know, but it's not something to build your entire strategy around. For this to work, you need to place a bet on a game early enough for a significant line move to occur, then notice the line shift and then bet on the other side to set the middle. And on top of this, you still need the middle to hit, which can be quite complicated. While middling opportunities are rare, especially in high-profile events, shopping for lines at multiple sportbooks can increase your odds of finding them. How much of your bank should you put on each bet? This is a tricky question. A conservative approach would be to limit each bet to 1 to 2% of your bankroll. However, this could limit the money you win on favorable bets. What happens if you're so sure about a pick? Making a 1% bet seems like a waste. So, how do you determine the optimal bet to place? This is where the Kelly criterion comes in. The Kelly criterion is a mathematical formula for determining the optimal fraction of a bankroll to allocate on a bet, given the probability of winning and the odds offered, and it goes as follows. Let's imagine you have a bankroll of $10,000. Yes, that's why I said imagine. And you're betting on the Kansas City Chiefs versus Los Angeles Rams. After calculating the actual win probability for the Chiefs, you determine it's around 60%. How much money should you bet on this game? Using the formula where B equals the decimal odds, P the probability of winning, and Q the probability of losing, you should bet 9.4% of your bank. Yet again, these are the Chiefs, so you could probably bet your entire net worth to them. Regardless of the strategy you choose, it's crucial to stick with it for the long haul, since the law of large numbers states that as the number of bets increases, the average outcome will converge to the expected value. This means that even if you experience a losing streak, your strategy will eventually pay out as the number of bets grows. There is, of course, a very fine line between properly testing a strategy and chasing losses. So, how long should you stick with a betting strategy to see if it's working? According to Tom Whitaker from Betting System Guides, the optimal time frame is of 6 months or 100 bets, whichever comes first. Now, after 100 bets, what's a realistic win rate to determine if your strategy is working or not? Well, since sportbooks generally charge a 5% fee, also known as the BIG, on the betting line, a bettor needs to win 52.38% of their bets to break even. While professional sports bettor wins percentages vary, it is widely accepted that most pros win around 55 to 56% of their bets. Even Billy Waters, one of the most legendary bettors in Las Vegas, a man that lives and almost dies for the game and holds the record of the biggest win in sports betting history, has a self-proclaimed win rate of 57%. With all this in mind, there is only one question left to answer. How much money would you actually make? Let's say you've done it all. Manage your bankroll, spend an ungodly amount of time understanding the technical intricacies of the sport you're betting on, as well as trying to understand stats that, let's be honest, not even the people that create them know what they mean. Hell, you even bothered to get a high school level understanding of statistics. You've talked the talk and walked the walk. And now, you've made it. Now, instead of worrying about where your next paycheck is gonna come from, it's time to decide where you're gonna spend it. Fast cars, travels, yachts, expensive clothes, hookers, the sky's the limit. You even wonder how you're gonna handle your newfound wealth and the envy it will undoubtedly generate. Could you stay true to yourself? Will you be able to form genuine connections without the crippling anxiety that people only like you for your money? Maybe even Allison will finally agree to get that cup of coffee after 5 years. Who knows, maybe even it's 10%, Roy. 10% not even in the low end, not even 10% on average, it's 10% in the high end for conservative strategies such as value betting with a realistic average between 5 to 7%. Hell, most professional bettors actually aim for a 15% ROI. As Covers puts it, it's not a sexy life scratching out 5% returns, but if you think you're gonna get a 15% ROI or more, you need a reality check. Especially when, again, you take into consideration that only 3% of bettors are profitable. Going back to the idea that many Americans are swapping investing for sports betting, how hard would it be to replicate a 10% ROI in the stock market? Well, turns out it's not that complicated. While there are many fun ways to lose your money in the stock market, such as meme stocks, out-of-the-money options, or if you're enough of a sociopath, shorting pharmaceutical tries, all that you need to do is put all that money into the S&P 500. The Standard & Poor's 500 is a stock market index that represents the performance of the 500 largest traded companies in the US, including Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta. Since its introduction in 1957, the S&P 500's annual returns, including dividends, has averaged 10% throughout 2023, according to the DQYDJ. Okay, but if sports betting is not that lucrative, what about this guy on TikTok who claims he was able to buy a mansion in Las Vegas with his sports betting money? There are two main reasons why you shouldn't trust these individuals. First, if someone was truly making screwy amounts of money, they wouldn't be trying to grift me for $200 in a pick. Second, sportsbooks often ban or restrict users who consistently beat them, so it's in the best interest of successful bettors to remain anonymous. This isn't to say that every tipster is a scammer. Some may generally provide valuable advice that can help you make money in the long run, but that you should distrust anyone that tries to sell you this as a lifestyle purely maintained by sports betting. Most people that actually make a living out of sports betting occupy a sweet spot where they're good enough to make a profit, can sell some picks without getting banned, and may even get recruited by betting sites to promote them, or if they have enough of a personality, appear on a TV or podcast. And if you decide to give your money to one of these guys, just make sure at the very least it beats Eric Cork. That's right, Stephen Furry has a 59% win rate in all his NFL picks, so needless to say, he has that dog in him. Parlays prey on the fact that our monkey brains are really not that good at probability, and I'm not talking about me failing probability 101, but rather how bad we are at accurately assessing risks. You might think each bet on a parlay has a 50% chance of winning, giving you a decent shot at success. However, you're forgetting that each bet is an independent event with its own probability. In this case, the actual probability of winning a 10-leg parlay with straight bets is 0.5 to the 10 or a minuscule 0.097%. Or to put it into words that your monkey brain can actually understand, you'd expect to win a 10-leg parlay once every 1024 attempts. And of course wins like this do happen, but they are so rare that sportsbook will actively give you free money to keep you betting, knowing you're more likely to lose that money than turning it into a life-changing sum. Well, back in the old days when gambling was banned all across the US, it was important for these sites to make a distinction between fantasy sports and sports betting, which is the reason they made sure that it was perceived as a game of skill and not luck, a distinction that was crucial to their business. There is of course some skill involved, however people tend to both overestimate the amount of skill they have and underestimate the true amount of skill it takes to actually win. Back in 2018, John Oliver made a piece on these websites where he found out that
91% of the profits were won by just the top 1.3% of players during the first half of the baseball season. 85% of players were losers.
And B, these are the people you're competing against.
Albertson made over $200,000 playing fantasy sports last year. In drafting his fantasy teams, Albertson spends hours each day studying his own homemade algorithms that track thousands of up-to-the-minute statistics and player projections.
So, can you make a living out of sports betting? I mean, given enough time and money, you could probably do it, but that is true for pretty much anything else. With this, I'm not saying you shouldn't gamble. Everyone is free to choose their economic demise. I chose college, some people have kids, and others just simply choose to be happy and commit tax fraud. But what I am saying is that your livelihood should never depend on some 12-leg parlay. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
By the screen with a gambler's stare, bet his dreams on fortunes till they disappeared in thin air.